This is my Game 7 recap of my chess tournament in Sardinia, Italy. Today I am playing a youngster, an 11-year-old, who is a FIDE master. He's a master at chess at 11 years old who boasts a rating of 2143. And he is also struggling in this tournament, just like me. I have 2 out of 6 possible points in this tournament, and my opponent has 1.5 fighting with the black pieces. We start off in this game, I have white and I go e4, my opponent goes c5, and I go knight f3. This is the Sicilian defense. d6, everything's normal so far, I'm in my prep. I go d4, c takes, and a knight f6, attacking my pawn. I go knight c6, and I'm expecting him to play, as he's been playing the last few months, knight c6, and then typically I would go bishop g5 here. But this is a very competitive tournament in which people are prepping and trying things all the time. And if you're 11 years old, you've been playing the game 4-5 years, prep is new all the time. This guy is traveling all around the world to play in chess tournaments. So he goes with a move I think he's never played before in a competitive game, a6. a6 is not a new move for us, but it's a new move for me in the context of this game, having prepared against knight c6. This is the Najdorf Sicilian. It involves that you're taking up this b5 square so none of my knights can be dangerous against your dark squares, and yeah, it just aims to kick my knight with e5 coming in. So I play f3, still in my prep, but out of my prep because this is in my prep, e5, knight b3, and now bishop e6. So far, pretty regular. I had been practicing the Najdorf quite a bit coming up towards this tournament, but this is round 7, so we're pretty late in the tournament, and I haven't seen any Najdorfs yet, and I wasn't preparing to play one today. So I go bishop e3, development move. Usually it's a catalyst to playing queen d2 and forming a battery, but this bishop is also the heart of the Najdorf. It's very contiguous with our pawn structure, which is present on light squares, as we have our dark square bishop eyeing both sides of the board. Now I go with knight d5. So h5 is like a new-ish type move. It's just to prevent g4 from me like having a quick castles long and quickly running my pawns up the board. It's a very nice preventative move. So I have some prep against this. I go knight d5 directly. The goal of this is that when we trade, you can trade with the knight, but if you do, I save a time by not playing queen d2. And if you take here, it says inaccurate, it's not. Now queen takes d3. And here, white has gained a free move because usually we would play queen d2 and then take back with the queen, wasting a move. But we have gained a free move in the position. That's the idea. But my opponent takes back with the bishop, which is the best move, and now I take, and now knight d7. I have never seen this before. So this is completely normal. Here, my goal is to play with this 4-on-3. So black has 3 pawns on this queen side, I have 4. And the goal is to avalanche my pawns like this, bring my knight to a5, and then play a nice, ambitious c5 move that is called a breaking through my opponent's pawn structure. So I go with queen d2, knight, rook c8. This is possibly my opponent was out of his prep by now. This is like a 3rd best move or maybe a 4th best move. So I was completely out of my prep now. Rook c8, I don't know what it does. It's a typical development move in these Najdorf structures, but it's played at the wrong time. The main line is g6. Other lines are bishop e7 or queen c7 that are less good, but g6 is very, very main line. So rook c8, I just play c4 and go with my plan. Even better is knight a5 directly, says the engine. Just poking at this pawn on b7, and if b6 is played, we just enter here on c6, very nice with already an advantage. So queen c7, and then I would go c4, just gaining that tempo. But I'm used to playing c4 first. I learned now that knight a5 is better in this specific position. g6 is played, and now we are kind of getting into the main line-ish. This rook on c8 is a bit premature, but this is the main line. Bishop d3, bishop g7, so we're just both developing. And actually, bishop d3 is not the best move to develop my bishop. Here I'm supposed to go bishop e2 out of a very interesting term in chess called prophylaxis. prophylaxis. So here, if I go to d3, it's a small minor inaccuracy, you could say. I will run into, in the long term, things like e4 that will take a time off my bishop. It will hit my bishop. Whereas if I go prophylaxis and I go bishop e2, prophylaxis means to prevent. Now I prevent these e4 things later on in the game. This is very annoying. It's not inaccurate. It's actually a very good move. So now my opponent plays bishop g7, finishing his development. We do, with castles on both sides, knight a5, attacking this b7 pawn, very common for b4 and c5. This is not good in this position because my opponent has the very cool and very ambitious e4, which he missed in the game. Here you're sacrificing the pawn just to take up space and dynamism in the position. So if I take with the f pawn, knight g4 comes in. If I go with a seemingly nice move like bishop f4, well, guess what? I kind of blunder out this diagonal, which is the heart of the position, as I said earlier, and bishop d4, queen b6 comes into play, threatening these knight f2 things, defended by both these pieces. It becomes very scary for the white pieces. So this square means a lot to black, and my bishop is kind of in a bind, might have to get traded off, and that is worth a full pawn. If you can trade off this knight for this bishop, the engine says it's worth a full pawn in this position. Also, these outposts are looking very nice for the black pieces as well on e5. My opponent doesn't play this and goes queen c7, which is a mistake due to this e4 being that much stronger. I bring in my rook on c1, which is very common and typical. I want to bring in rook ft1, b4, and then c5, launch that attack and go nuts. But I know, I'm very aware that my opponent has this as counterplay, and I'm calculating and fighting every move to play against this. So rook fe8, now I go with b4, and now he goes e4. This I expected, but I felt that after takes, now it's my turn, and I get to play one of three things, and you, the audience, it is your turn to decide what white should play. So in this position, you have three options. Knowing that rook ce8 is coming in to pressure the bishop, you could prophylactically go bishop f2. That's A. You could defend this bishop early. That's B. Or you could try for c5 here. That's C. I'll let you pause the video to solve. What do you think white should play in this position? I wouldn't be asking this if I didn't miss it in the game. I didn't miss it. Missing it is like completely overlooking it. I saw it. I calculated it. I sort of liked it. I hesitated. I didn't play it. The answer is c5. And it looks like it gives a pawn completely. I mean, just takes, and then after takes, my opponent can just take here, queen takes, and then queen takes a5. And overall, I have two pieces lost for the rook, and it looks like black is just going to manage to win this here. But what I had to see, and what I did see, is that here you have the intermediate move d6, attacking the queen before taking back this pawn. This does so that when the queen moves and you take here, rook takes is not possible with the tactic of queen takes e3 and queen takes a5 because I'm attacking this queen on b6. And so that's like an intermediate thing. I saw this in the game, still didn't like it because of knight takes c5 and stopped calculating there. And obviously you're seeing the eval bar. Here it's completely winning for white. If I would have seen past those 5 moves, that here white has just a simple rook b1. Attacking the queen while this is pressured, while this is going home run, while this is pressuring b7, it's absolute craziness on the board. The queen goes to a7, and then I would go rook takes b7 with an absolute beamer of a bishop pinning this knight that was the defender of the pawn. It's crazy, really. The queen could also go back to d8, it only has like 2 squares, and here we have this magical tactic, bishop takes, rook takes, and knight takes b7 with the beautiful fork, winning the game because I'll be left with a passed pawn. Say something like this, d7 with d8 is completely lights out. So not spotting rook b1 down the line 4 moves is kind of rough, and here that made me play not the good move, which was rook f4. This is what I actually ended up playing. Bishop f2 and rook e2 are still okay, but they're measly moves, they're defensive, and that lets the opponent come on into the play. So is rook f4, also a mistake. Here I wanted to trade rooks so that I could get c5, but it's just completely wrong. Here after rook takes, bishop takes, yes, I'm pinning this pawn on d6 so that c5 ideas work, but my opponent doesn't have to take this rook on f4 and can just play knight f6. And this scared me a little during the game because I completely overlooked this. I looked at rook here and takes, and then I thought, okay, there's no rook on c8, c5, then I can play it. Then I can play c5. The truth is, you have to play c5 in this pawn structure. Even when it gives a pawn, like, it's the make or break of the position for the white pieces. If you play the Najdorf, you should know this, if you play this line. But, knight f6, and now if I take, when I take, I did take, knight takes e4 attacks my queen. And allowing this dynamism from the black pieces really puts my attack in danger, the c5 move, and my entire position at risk, because my king is not that safe, my pieces on the king side are not that safe, and what we'll see over the next few moves is a complete transformation of this position, almost unrecognizable in 4 to 5 moves. I go queen d3, pressuring the knight, rook e8 to defend, very normal, and here again I'm looking at this c5 push, but there's really no way I play it now, because now after takes, I don't have this d6 move because the knight covers d6. This knight on e5, on e4 is an absolute scorpion. So I can't play c5. I have to go, well, I don't have to go, but knight b3 is the best move to potentially push c5 in a reclining position. Also here, I can't take back because my queen is off of d2, and then queen takes a5 would just lose a piece. So I go knight b3, queen e7, and this is what I was saying about transformational. Like, suddenly you realize that c5 is not even an issue because black covers it, but not only that, black can now play things like knight c3 and then just like attack my bishop, covering my entire rook's defense on this pawn. It's really looking shocking now. And you're observing things that are starting to happen on the board. Queen h4, bishop e5, mate threats are coming in, all because this knight is a catalyst to all these nice invasive moves for the black pieces, and my king's lawn is shaved off here. I have absolute no defenders on the kingside castle. It's looking dire. I have to go back. And so here, what would you play between the moves bishop d4 as a defensive move, trying to neutralize this bishop, or knight to d2, trying to neutralize this knight? Try to think, pause the video and solve, or intuitively guess during this video, up to you. Bishop d4 is the right move. I was scared of this. I was deciding between both moves during the game, and I wasn't really sure of this because of bishop e5 and still going with this here. And after takes, queen takes, it looks just like inevitable that I can stop this. It doesn't look as scary, you know, as this. I was really scared of this also, because here you're threatening maybe things with this and queen f2, or just, it's just invasive, and I just don't have any pieces doing anything. It's really scary. Like, I hope you can see it from my eyes. So I went with knight d2, which is also a mistake, for a move that is really interesting and hard to find. And my opponent found it in time pressure, I think, and he played really well here. He played knight c3, which just punishes entirely. So this same pattern of just discovery attack on this bishop, but this knight is also threatening this magical pawn on a2. This pawn is not so much a pawn, but also a very nice square to fork both of my pieces on c1 and b4. And I missed this entirely. Knight c3 was an absolute bombshell to my eyes. I went rook e1 to defend my bishop, and now knight takes a2. It doesn't look like such a nice move, but it's really, really convincing. Like, you're taking a pawn. Usually I would have a move, an initiative, a tempo-taking move on that pawn-taking move, on that material-grabbing move that would give me some compensation, but because you have knight takes a2 on tempo on this pawn on b4, I have to defend. So now my pieces are also binded. I didn't defend it, actually. I went for a move here. If I try to defend, knight back to c3, and I'm just assuming down a pawn full. So here I went knight f3, knight takes b4, and queen d2. Attacking this and threatening some discoveries on this queen here. So a5 is the only way to defend. And now I go with the discovery bishop c5. So here I'm attacking this queen and rook, and I'm winning this pawn here on d6. I was feeling bad. Obviously, I know it's kind of losing, but I am also optimistic that I'm winning the pawn that is stopping my protected passed pawn now on d5, which was really interesting. A little bit better of a discovery was bishop b6, which I have to mention, because after this takes, and bishop takes a5, I could be better in this position if my opponent doesn't play knight a6. It's a forced move, so you have to play it. But here after queen e1, it's hard for black to really convert this. You're up a pawn, but white has pretty good drawing chances, I would say, overall. But bishop c5 looks just so much more juicy, and when you have a minute on the clock, you want to play bishop c5. So queen d8, I trade rooks and I win the d6 pawn. My opponent plays queen e4. I thought my opponent was going to defend this, and when you're down on time with 2 minutes left, you really look at what your opponent is going to do, what you want your opponent to do, which is a bad process of thinking. And so I was only thinking of queen a4 defending this knight because it was attacked. And here I would have like bishop c7, and I'm like close to being back in the game now. It's almost equal. But queen e4 is such a nice move. You're centralizing the queen, you're preparing checks here, and you really don't care about giving a pawn here. Also, this bishop d4 could invade at a possible time. I took on b4, and he meets this bishop takes b4 here, of course not giving the pawn here because this would be near equality. Here he plays queen b1. Queen b1 check wins back the pawn, but also offers a queen trade into a winning endgame, but also he's attacking c4. And so now I go queen e8, and this is the losing mistake of the game. Taking the queen is my best chance at drawing this. Of course, I don't love this. I don't even think I have chances of drawing this, but the engine says that it's not even -1 for the black pieces, even though black is up a pawn. Now this pawn is way too dangerous. I have to play king f1, b3, and knight d2 is the best way to continue this, but I really think that this is just over in a practical term. So queen e8 loses because my opponent can defend with bishop f8. Nothing surprising there. And now after h4, I wanted to go knight e5 so badly, but it just throws mates because the queen is off of e1 now. And so h4, queen takes c4. Yeah, I don't know what to do. Like I think I'm losing this pawn. If I try to defend it, this pawn is just starting to run here on the a file, and there's nothing I can really do to stop it. Without giving a pawn on c4, let's say. So I play h4, breathing space for my king, queen takes c4, and now I go to d7, and you just see me defending a position that's already kind of lost. I have to counterattack if I want to hold or potentially get a draw here, and it's just not possible. Queen c5 check, king h1, bishop d6. I take on b7, and a few moves later, I see that it's impossible to defend this. I go queen h2, but of course, when you transpose to this endgame here, the pawn is an outside pass pawn, and my king cannot catch up. And here I had to do the honors and resign to someone who is half my age. I'm 22 years old, and 2100 of FIDE master. And now I have 2 out of 7, and I'm completely discouraged. Tomorrow, I am playing a 2100 from Italy, and it's a must-win game to salvage this tournament. See you tomorrow.